Hi there, I'm Mary. And yeah, this story starts with a house, my house. I saved for years, bought it on my own. But when my parents found out I didn't buy it for my sister, they lost it. What came next? Fake documents, a GoFundMe scam. My niece left on my porch like some emotional ransom. They even toured the house behind my back before I ever saw it, all because I said no. But the worst part? It wasn't sudden. It was planned. How do you fight back when your own family rewrites the truth? Keep watching. I'll show you how. The moment I signed the papers, I thought I'd feel nothing but pride. I stood in the kitchen of my new home, alone, surrounded by empty space and the smell of fresh paint. The keys felt heavier than I imagined. Not physically, but something about that weight in my palm told me this wouldn't be just a milestone. It would be a line in the sand. I hadn't told anyone until it was done. After all the sacrifices, skipping vacations, driving the same beat-up truck for years, fixing cars with busted knuckles and grease-caked elbows, this was mine. Every tile, every wall, every damn creak of the floorboard was paid with hours of overtime and scraped knuckles, so I posted one photo, just one. A simple caption, "Finally home." Within 10 minutes, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. Notifications, calls, one from Mom. At first, I thought maybe she'd surprise me. Maybe, just this once, she'd say, "I'm proud of you." Instead, her voice dropped like a stone in my stomach. "You bought a house without even thinking of your sister?" she asked, skipping past hello, past congratulations, past anything human. I blinked, walking from the kitchen to the small sunlit living room, phone pressed to my ear. "I'm sorry, what?" "You know Noreen's been struggling. Rent is insane these days. And you go and drop a down payment like it's nothing? How do you think that makes her feel?" I didn't say anything. My mind was still trying to recalibrate. Was she serious? "You could have at least thought of sharing," she went on. 3 bedrooms? What are you going to do with all that space? You don't even have a family." And there it was. That knife, clean and quick. You don't even have a family. I could have reminded her that I'd been helping her and Dad cover utilities since I was 20, that I'd paid Noreen's car note twice without complaint, that I worked through pneumonia one winter to keep the shop running. But none of that ever seemed to matter. I wasn't the golden child. I was the reliable one, the backup plan, the one who handled things while Noreen spiraled. When I didn't answer, she doubled down. "Look, honey, no one's saying you can't have your own space. But you know your sister needs stability. You can't seriously expect her to find her own place right now, can you?" "She's 34, I said finally. My voice came out flat. "She's not a child. She's going through a rough patch. She's always going through a rough patch." The silence on the line stretched, then cracked. "You don't mean that," she said sharply. "I do," I replied. "I meant it 5 years ago, and I mean it now. You've changed, Maris. You used to care." I looked around the living room. Light poured through the big bay window. I saw a future here. Quiet mornings, meals cooked without chaos, the rare calm of finally choosing myself. "I still care," I said softer. "Just not in the way you expect." She scoffed. "This family bent over backwards for you." "Did it?" I asked, because I remember working double shifts while Noreen was backpacking through Europe. I remember eating ramen while she got new outfits for every season. Her breath hitched. "That's not fair. What's not fair is acting like this house belongs to anyone but me." Another silence. This one longer. Then a click. Call ended. I didn't even look at the screen. I just stood there, staring out the window like the trees outside might offer answers. That night, I lay awake on a cheap mattress placed directly on the floor. No bed frame yet. I scrolled through text after text. Dad hadn't messaged, but I could see he'd read everything. Noreen hadn't said a word, which in her case meant something was coming. Silence was never silence with her. It was the breath before the strike. I got up and wandered the house barefoot. Still boxes stacked by the walls. The fridge was empty, except for water bottles and a 6-pack of something I didn't remember buying. I stood in the kitchen again. Same spot where I'd started the day, staring at nothing. 20 years of grinding just to be told I was selfish. Growing up, Noreen got the new clothes, the new phone. The summer camps. I got hand-me-downs, life lessons, and sermons about responsibility. When she flunked out of college, Mom cried. When I graduated while holding 2 part-time jobs, they sent a card. No money, just a card. And now, here I was, finally carving out something just for myself, and it still wasn't allowed. I tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't shut up. Their voices played on loop. She needs help. You used to care. 3 bedrooms, for what? I clenched my jaw so tight it ached, tossed the blanket off and paced the hallway. The silence of this house should have been peaceful, but it wasn't. It was loaded, like walking through a field of landmines disguised as floorboards. I didn't respond to any more messages. I didn't pick up when the phone rang again. I just sat back down on the kitchen floor with my back against the cabinet and the keys still in my hand. For the first time since closing, I realized something. This house might be mine on paper, but the fight for it had just begun. I didn't sleep that night. I must have drifted for a minute or two, but the sun was already creeping in by the time I finally stood up and stretched out the knots in my spine. My phone had vibrated at least a dozen times while I was curled up on the kitchen floor. The screen was glowing with unread messages. I told myself not to check. Then, stupidly, I did. The first one was from Aunt Claudia. So proud of you for doing the right thing for Noreen. She really deserves this break. I stared at it, unblinking. What break? What right thing? I hadn't told Claudia anything. I hadn't told anyone, outside of that one photo, that I'd bought the house. And yet here she was, offering congratulations. Not to me, but to Noreen. The next few texts were variations on the same theme. A cousin asking when Noreen was moving in. A distant relative from Atlanta calling me generous for thinking of my sister. The last straw was from a woman I hadn't spoken to since I was 14. Your mama raised a fine girl. Family always comes first. Noreen's lucky to have you. I set the phone down like it had just bitten me. I walked to the living room window and stared out at the quiet street. Everything outside was calm, trees shaking off last night's breeze. But in my chest, something was unraveling fast. This wasn't some casual misunderstanding. This was a story, crafted, circulated, and apparently believed. And it didn't come from me. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. I should have let it go to voicemail, but I didn't. Morning? Came my father's voice, measured, calm, calculated. Did you know Mom told people I bought this place for Noreen? A pause, just long enough for him to think. People talk, Maris. She might have mentioned something, but she didn't mean harm. She told Aunt Claudia I was gifting it to her. Well, if that's what ends up happening, what's the big deal? I almost dropped the phone. It's not happening, I said, slow and sharp. I bought this house for me, with my money. My name's on every document. There's no gifting anything. You wouldn't have gotten that far if we hadn't stepped in when you needed it. And there it was. I've paid you back for that training course 5 times over. He didn't deny it, just shifted. You think we wanted to help only to be thrown aside later? We invested in you because we believed in you. And now your sister needs someone to believe in her. That's not an investment, Dad. That's a transaction. And I don't owe anyone a house. You're missing the bigger picture here, sweetheart. Family isn't about owing or debt. It's about stepping up when it matters. You mean when it's convenient for everyone else? His voice dropped a little, into that low, disappointed tone he used when I didn't clean up as a kid. You're better than this. I hung up. Not slammed, not rage slammed, just tapped the red circle like pressing stop on a movie I didn't like. I tossed the phone on the couch and paced the living room. My head was spinning, but a part of me, a very quiet part, was settling, like a puzzle piece falling into place. This wasn't about fairness or misunderstanding. It wasn't about a house or rent or support. It was a well-rehearsed play, and I'd walked in right on cue. Mom spun the story, Dad applied pressure, and the chorus of extended family echoed the line, "Good girl, Maris, do the right thing." They were making the decision for me, publicly, before I even knew there was a decision to be made. As I stood there, I thought back, because of course I did. Back to sophomore year of high school. Noreen got piano lessons from a private tutor flown in from Nashville. I got a bus pass and a lecture on self-reliance. Back to college. I lived off peanut butter sandwiches while working at a tire shop. Noreen spent a semester in Paris, then dropped out 2 credits short of graduating, and now she needed help. Again. I remembered prom night. I didn't go. I was working the register at a gas station while my classmates danced. The day my college acceptance came in, I was changing brake pads under a Honda Civic. I didn't complain, not once, but they always told me I was strong, while Noreen was sensitive, vulnerable, going through a phase. Back then, I thought I was the lucky one. I told myself being the dependable daughter meant they trusted me more. Now, standing in the living room of a house I bought and was apparently about to give away, I saw it differently. I wasn't the lucky one. I was the fallback, the failsafe, the one expected to bend when things got tight. The phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from Uncle Ray. "You're doing the right thing, kiddo. Your sister really needs this." I sat down, letting the couch cushions absorb the weight I didn't know I was carrying. They already believed it. It was already done in their minds. I hadn't agreed to a damn thing, but somehow, I was already the villain if I didn't go through with it. I got up and walked to the back of the house, stepped onto the patio. The early spring air still had a bite to it, and the grass was wet with morning dew. I stood there for a moment, just breathing. No plans, no arguments, just breath. And then it clicked. They were counting on me staying quiet, on me absorbing the guilt, nodding along, handing over the keys like a good daughter. But I wasn't the backup plan anymore. I spent the next 2 days moving boxes, setting up shelves, and scrubbing every inch of the kitchen. Not because it was dirty, but because I needed the distraction. The quiet was unnerving. No more texts, no calls, no just checking in or guilt-drenched monologues. And that's what scared me. The calm wasn't natural. It was rehearsed, like everyone had paused the show, waiting for me to come crawling back to the script they'd written for me. I was supposed to crack. I was supposed to buckle under the pressure. And yet, here I was, making coffee, installing curtain rods, deciding whether I liked the color of the hallway or if it needed a second coat. I told myself maybe they'd finally accepted it. Maybe the silence meant they understood this wasn't a phase or a stunt. Maybe, just maybe, they were backing off. But then, at 11:37 p.m. on a Thursday night, my phone lit up with a message from Noreen. "I can't take this anymore. Maybe it's better if I'm just gone." Just gone. I stared at the words. No follow-up, no explanation. Just those 10 soul-piercing words. I read it twice, then a third time. My thumb hovered over the screen, unsure what to do. Was she okay? Was this a real cry for help? Or was it another performance? I knew how manipulative she could be. I'd lived through it. I'd cleaned up her messes. I'd taken the blame for things she did without hesitation. But this was something different. Or at least it looked different. I paced the living room barefoot, one hand in my hair, the other still holding the phone. The message burned a hole in my brain. I couldn't ignore it. But I couldn't trust it either. That's what made it so dangerous. I was halfway through typing a response when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. "Hello? Maris, this is Jessica. I'm a friend of Noreen's." Her voice cracked halfway through the sentence. "She's not answering any of us. She left the apartment an hour ago. She was crying. She said something about the river, and I don't know if she's bluffing or serious, but I'm freaking out." I closed my eyes. Of course Jessica called me. Not the police, not her mom, me. I pressed the phone harder against my ear. Where did she say she was going? She didn't. She just said, "Maybe Maris will care when I'm gone." That's the last thing she said. Then she turned off her phone. I opened my mouth but didn't speak. "She mentioned the river, Maris," Jessica repeated, voice trembling. "She's done stuff like this before, but never this bad." Done stuff like this before. Yeah, she had. When I was 17, Noreen faked a panic attack in front of our parents because she'd gotten caught sneaking out with a boyfriend. I covered for her, lied to our folks, said I was the one who let him in. She told them she was too afraid to speak, and let me take the grounding. Another time, she stole $200 from our mom's purse and planted the empty envelope in my drawer. I didn't even know it was there until Mom found it and exploded. That was the day I stopped asking for allowance. I shook those memories out of my head like dust off an old coat. This wasn't just nostalgia, it was a pattern. "I'll check around," I told Jessica, keeping my voice calm. "But if you're really worried, you need to call the police." There was a pause on the other end. I just thought, maybe she'd listen to you. I ended the call and stood there, the phone heavy in my hand. I didn't want to be the one responsible for her life, again. I didn't want to walk back into the fire she set every time she wanted attention. But if something really happened, if I didn't act, I took a breath and opened my laptop, pulled up the local emergency department intake logs, something I'd learned how to do after years of dealing with her drama. Nothing under her name, no Jane Does matching her description, no reports of someone pulled from the river. So far, nothing. Still, I wasn't going to be caught off guard. I double-checked that my exterior cameras were armed and recording. I scribbled a dated note in a journal I kept hidden in the bedroom drawer, just in case this ever turned legal. If anyone came knocking, I'd have my records. I was about to shut my laptop when another notification popped up. Noreen had sent a video. Just one. The thumbnail showed her face, red and blotchy. She looked like she'd been crying, though it could have been makeup. Her eyes were wide, locked on the lens like it was a lifeline, or a trap. I finally pressed play. The moment the video loaded, her voice filled my kitchen, thin, cracking, like a porcelain plate on the verge of breaking. "I don't know how much longer I can pretend I'm okay," Noreen said, staring directly into the camera like it was her only friend left on earth. Her mascara was smudged, giving her that perfect tragic look. "Maris promised she'd help. She told me this house was for both of us, and now she's just locked me out of her life." I paused it. I never said any of that. Never. I backed it up 10 seconds, listened again. Word for word, the same lie, framed to sound like a betrayal of biblical proportions. She made it sound like I tossed her on the street and slammed the door behind her. And just beneath the video, like a cherry on top of the manipulation sundae, was a GoFundMe link. "Help me rebuild my life after being abandoned by my sister?" A few lines down, single woman struggling with trauma, betrayed by family, no home, no safety, just trying to survive. She even called herself a single mom, which, last I checked, was new. Either she adopted someone in the past 48 hours, or she was now including her rescue dog as her dependent. I shut the laptop, but it was too late. My phone was already buzzing, comments, DMs, tags, all boiling to the surface like oil in a forgotten frying pan. "Monster. How can you do that to your own blood? Some people don't deserve family." They weren't asking for context. They weren't checking facts. They were just picking sides, and I'd already been cast as the villain. My notifications kept pouring in, each one like a slap across the face. I scrolled down and saw someone from high school, Melissa Darnell, comment, "Karma comes fast. Always knew Maris had a mean streak." I hadn't talked to Melissa since junior prom, and suddenly she had a front row seat in my personal disaster. I wanted to scream, or maybe disappear, but I did neither. Instead, I got dressed and headed to the garage. My shop had always been my escape, just metal, grease, and tools that didn't lie. I parked out back, walked in through the service entrance, and was greeted with the warm buzz of fluorescent lights and the smell of fresh oil. It was early, and only Dante was there, wiping down the front desk. He gave me a nod. No words. He knew. "You saw it?" I asked. He nodded again. "Don't mean it's true." I forced a half smile and stepped into the break room, setting my keys on the counter with more force than needed. I turned on the coffee pot like that was going to fix anything. 10 minutes later, a customer came in. Middle-aged woman, maybe 55, gray sweater, pleasant face. She needed her alternator checked, simple enough. But as I handed her the clipboard, she looked up at me, hesitating. "I don't mean to pry, but..." Her voice trailed off. She tapped her fingers on the counter. "Is it true what your sister posted?" I stared at her. "Which part?" "The GoFundMe. People are sharing it all over Facebook, saying you left her with nowhere to go." I took a slow breath. She never lived with me. She was never promised this house. I haven't seen her in person in weeks." The woman gave me that polite southern smile, the kind you use when you don't believe someone but don't want to say it out loud. Well, people talk. They sure do. After she left, Dante followed me back to the office and closed the door. "You can't stay quiet, boss," he said, arms folded. "You think silence is noble, but all it does is let her rewrite the whole story." He wasn't wrong, but I also wasn't going to post some angry rant or air the family's dirty laundry for strangers to debate. That wasn't me. Still, doing nothing didn't feel right either. By noon, I'd gone through every comment, every message. Even a guy I dated briefly 5 years ago had something to say. "Wow, didn't expect this from you. Really disappointed." I'd drafted a post 3 times and deleted it 3 times. Nothing felt like the right move. When the shop finally closed, I sat in my truck, engine off, just staring at my phone. I wasn't crying. I wasn't even shaking, just processing. Then it buzzed again. A new message, this time not from some stranger. It was from my mother. "We didn't want it to go this way, but you left us no choice." I stared at it until the screen dimmed. They were just getting started. I didn't sleep that night. My eyes were open, fixed on the ceiling like it might offer answers. My phone buzzed again around 6:30 a.m., but I didn't even look at it. I wasn't in the mood for another stranger calling me heartless or selfish or cold. I finally got out of bed and shuffled into the living room, still in the old hoodie I'd worn to the shop. The sun had barely crept up over the edge of the rooftops outside, casting long shadows across my hardwood floor. I made coffee I didn't really want, toast I barely ate. When I heard the knock at the door, I thought, half hoped, it was Dante. It wasn't. It was the mail carrier. He held out a manila envelope, thick and sealed. "Certified," he said. "Needs a signature." I scribbled my name with shaking fingers, closed the door, and stared at the envelope like it might explode. It was from a law office. My hands turned cold. My stomach dropped like I'd swallowed a brick. I set it on the kitchen table and just walked away. Let it sit there for 3 hours while I tried to go about my day like it didn't exist. Folded laundry, cleaned the bathroom, answered a few customer emails. All the while, the envelope sat there like a ticking time bomb. Finally, around noon, I sat down, sliced it open, and pulled out the papers. Cease and desist. Accusations of withholding family property. Claims of emotional distress. Demands that I either resolve the matter privately or prepare for formal litigation. I laughed. A single, sharp exhale that didn't sound anything like amusement. Family property? Since when was something I paid for, sweated for, bled for, considered shared? They hadn't contributed a cent, not 1 dime, but here they were, acting like my independence was theft. And the kicker? The letter referenced prior verbal assurances that I had intended to gift the home to Noreen. That was their angle. Not logic, not fairness, just a made-up promise and emotional blackmail dressed up in legal stationery. I couldn't decide if I was more insulted or impressed. Not long after, the phone rang again. Unknown number. I should have let it go to voicemail, but I picked up. "Maris?" the voice asked. "This is Deacon Ellis from Hillgrove Community." I blinked. That church hadn't crossed my mind in over a decade. "Your mother reached out to us," he continued. "She's concerned, said you're going through something, said we should pray for you." I leaned on the counter, fingers gripping the edge. "Did she say what exactly I'm going through?" A beat of silence. Then, "She said you've lost your way." Lost my way. That's what they were calling it now. Standing up for myself was spiritual rebellion. Refusing to be manipulated was a moral crisis. "I appreciate your prayers, Deacon," I said, voice like ice. "But maybe next time you should ask both sides before you light a candle." I hung up without another word. It hit me then. They weren't just coming for my name. They were coming for my reputation. The legal threat was just one part. The smear campaign on Facebook, the sob stories to mutual friends, the calls to people I hadn't spoken to in years. It was all coordinated. They wanted to break me down from every angle, make me so ashamed, so isolated, that I'd fold out of sheer exhaustion. But I wasn't 17 anymore. I wasn't that girl standing in the hallway while my mom screamed about missing money I didn't take. I wasn't going to cry and confess to crimes I didn't commit. That afternoon at the shop, I pulled Dante aside. Look at this, I said, showing him the letter. He read it, frowning deeper with every line. It's garbage, he finally said. Nothing in here's enforceable. They're just trying to scare you. I nodded. Still, I'm getting a real lawyer. He gave me a quick nod, then leaned in. And maybe it's time you stop playing defense. He was right. Again. I made the call before I even left work. A client of mine had once mentioned her sister-in-law was a beast in family law. Tenacious, discreet, doesn't blink even when things get ugly. Her name was Dahlia Sloan. I left a message. She called back within the hour. We talked for 10 minutes. I told her everything. She didn't gasp. She didn't pity me. She just asked questions, made notes, and said she'd review the paperwork. Before we hung up, she said, "If they keep pushing this, we'll counter. Don't delete anything. Screenshot everything." I felt like I'd finally inhaled after days of drowning. That night, I sat on the porch of my house with a glass of unsweet tea, watching the wind rattle the fence. I didn't feel like a victim anymore. Not exactly. I felt sharpened. The house lights were off inside, but I didn't want them on. I liked the darkness now. It made everything else easier to see. Then my phone vibrated again. Another message. This one was from my mother. "We did what we had to do. Noreen is fragile. You know this. We tried everything else. This was the only way left." I stared at it, reread it, then dialed. She picked up on the first ring. "Maris, if you think this will break me," I said, calm as stone, "you don't know me at all." She didn't say anything. "Here's how it's going to work," I continued. "If one more stunt comes out of that house, one more lie, one more threat, I will go public, with everything. Screenshots, messages, history. I will burn the illusion to the ground." "You wouldn't." "I would, and I will." I ended the call before she could answer. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel victorious. But I felt clean, like I'd finally stopped carrying their guilt like it was mine. Just before I turned in for the night, Dahlia texted, "We need to talk. The papers weren't filed by your parents directly. The claimant is listed as Noreen Fay." I stared at the screen, heart thudding. It wasn't them. It was her. The morning sunlight barely reached through the blinds when I pulled into the parking lot of the cafe where Dahlia had set up the meeting. I didn't bother ordering anything. I wasn't hungry, and I didn't come for small talk. She slid the folder across the table, her fingers brushing it with finality. "They don't have a case," she said. "I've looked at the claim line by line. It's emotional manipulation, not legal standing." I skimmed the contents again anyway. Emotional distress. Withholding family property. All written as if the house I worked for had somehow been promised to someone else by birthright. "I can issue a formal response," she said. "But honestly, they're bluffing. And poorly." I let out a slow breath. "Good, but I want it documented anyway. If this escalates, I want to make sure I'm not playing catch-up." Dahlia nodded. "Smart move." After we parted, I drove straight to the garage. It was late morning now, and Dante was already elbow-deep in a transmission. The place smelled like motor oil and steel. Familiar. Grounding. I hadn't even stepped into the office when I heard the knock. Sharp, irregular. I turned, and there she was, Noreen. Hair messy like she'd just rolled out of bed, wearing oversized sunglasses and clutching a duffel bag like it was a lifeline. My breath caught, not in panic, but in sheer disbelief. "Just a few nights," she said, loud enough for the two customers in the waiting area to hear. "Till I figure something out." Heads turned. I blinked. "This isn't the place, Noreen." Her lower lip quivered. "Where am I supposed to go?" "You have an apartment," she sniffled. "Not anymore. Can we talk? Privately?" Dante, bless him, stepped between us. "Hey," he said gently. "Why don't you take a walk around the block while Maris finishes up here?" Noreen looked at him like he'd insulted her. But Dante didn't budge. He wasn't aggressive, just firm. She turned back to me. "I just need help. Isn't that what family's for?" "Family," I said evenly, "doesn't ambush people at their job." She scoffed but backed away, and Dante followed to make sure she left the premises. I sat down behind my desk, pulse still steady. That hadn't been a breakdown. It was a performance. A public plea meant to make me look heartless if I refused. A classic Noreen move. Swap private shame for public sympathy. The day blurred by. I buried myself in engine diagnostics and invoices, anything to block out the chaos. When evening came, I grabbed takeout and headed home, ready for silence. What I got instead was a scene out of a movie. On my front porch sat a child-sized stroller, a suitcase, and Liam, her toddler, asleep in a car seat, bundled in blankets. A note was taped to the handle. "I'm trusting you to do the right thing." My chest tightened, not from panic, but rage. I scooped up Liam gently and brought him inside, placing him on the couch and locking the door. Then I stepped back out and stared at the suitcase like it was radioactive. She left him here, without calling, without warning, just dumped him at my door like a stray cat, not even a text. This wasn't about needing help. This was a hostage negotiation. I checked my security camera feed to confirm what I already knew. She'd parked down the block, walked up quickly, then walked away without looking back. No one forces motherhood onto me. Not like this. I turned the porch light off, shut the curtains, and picked up my phone. The police weren't getting called for drama, but I was filing an official incident report. I wanted it on record that this was not abandonment I'd agreed to. If she twisted the story again, I'd have proof. The dispatcher was calm. I gave them my name, the details, asked for a report number. No drama, just procedure. When I hung up, I locked every door, checked the baby monitor I'd set up using my old tablet, and sat at the kitchen counter. Then I opened a blank email draft and typed, "To whom it may concern." They'd tried pity, they'd tried shame. Now they'd tried bait. Enough. The next morning started quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that didn't feel like peace. It felt like the deep breath before a punch. I was at the kitchen counter with coffee gone cold when Dahlia texted. It was a screenshot. "Tell me this isn't real." Attached was a PDF, a scanned document titled Family Investment Agreement. It looked like a contract, dated 2010, signed by my father, claiming that he had invested $18,000 into my business as a family trust extension, entitling the family to 35% of any properties acquired with profits from the shop. I nearly dropped my mug. He never gave me a cent. Not in 2010, not ever. I built my garage on blood, sweat, 2 credit cards, and a truckload of debt. I didn't even break even until 2014. And yet, there it was, complete with what looked like my old business name and a signature that could pass for mine if you squinted hard enough. Dahlia called 5 minutes later. "It's forged," she said. "No notary, no witness, sloppy copy-paste job. But it's convincing to someone who doesn't know better." Like a judge? If they push it hard enough, it could drag us into a delay. Maybe even mediation. It muddies the water. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Then we clear the water. I saved the file, logged the timestamp, started documenting everything. By mid-morning, my phone buzzed again, this time with Facebook notifications, dozens of them. My cousin Brandy had shared the GoFundMe. Can you believe this? Abandoning her own sister, unreal. Dozens of comments followed. She always thought she was better than the rest of us. Bet she forgot where she came from. Sad when money makes you heartless. Some defended me. Others said they were praying for my family. One even messaged me privately, saying they hoped I found healing, like I was the one who broke everything. I didn't respond, but I did drive, not aimlessly, not to cool off, to their house, the house I grew up in, now more symbol than home. I parked halfway down the block, took a breath, and walked up the driveway like I had a mission, because I did. Mom opened the door. Her eyes narrowed, but she stepped aside. Dad stood in the hallway, arms crossed like he'd been waiting to play referee. "You shouldn't be here," he said flatly. "Too bad." Mom folded her arms. "Are you happy now, making a spectacle of this?" "You forged a document," I said, holding up the printout. "You turned family into leverage. We did what we had to do. You left us no choice." "You always had a choice. You just liked the one where I stayed silent." Dad stepped forward. "We helped you when you had nothing. You wouldn't even have that garage if not for us." "Lies," I snapped. "And now you're using church gossip and fake contracts to ruin me? For what? Because I bought a house? For myself?" Mom's voice cracked. "Because Noreen needs it more. Then she should get a job." Silence. I turned to the door. "This ends today." If you or Noreen come near my property again, you'll hear from my attorney. No more messages, no more games. And if you think for a second I'm afraid of your threats, try me. Back at the garage, I made a decision. I posted screenshots of every fake message. The GoFundMe story, the contract, my own paper trail. Here's the truth, since they won't tell it. It spread fast. By late afternoon, support flooded in. People I hadn't heard from in years messaged me saying, "We see you now, we didn't know, we're sorry." Some of the hate turned into silence, some into apologies, and then, at closing, my phone rang again. Voicemail. It was her. "You think this is over? We're just getting started." I stared at the screen, heartbeat steady. They want war? Then let's finish it properly. By the third morning after the post, I was up before the sun. The air outside still had a bite, but my body felt like fire. Today wasn't just about defending myself anymore. It was about finishing what they started. I brewed coffee with muscle memory, barely tasting it as I opened my laptop and clicked into the folder marked Receipts. Screenshots of texts from Noreen, dated threats, the GoFundMe before it was taken down, voice messages, emails, even the photo of the suitcase on my porch. One by one, I dragged them into a new post. Here's the truth they won't tell you. I didn't caption it for drama. I captioned it for clarity. I time-stamped every image. I included the emergency call reference number from when I filed the incident report. I even added a link to the video Noreen had sent me crying, and I wrote simply, "Watch carefully." The post was live before 7 a.m. It didn't take long. Within 2 hours, my inbox was a wave of red dots. Comments poured in, friends, strangers, people who had initially believed the GoFundMe story now apologizing. Some who had donated asked where they could report it. The fundraiser collapsed by noon. GoFundMe removed the page, citing misleading content. I didn't feel joy. I felt cold relief. After lunch, I had a legal appointment at the courthouse downtown. Dahlia met me outside, holding a manila envelope and a look that said, "You were right." Inside were printed responses from opposing counsel. Still nothing official, no court filing. Just more threats masked as negotiations. We reviewed strategy over cheap coffee in the law library, going over timelines and possible restraining orders. As we were finishing up, someone called my name. "Maris?" I turned to see a man in a navy blazer. I didn't recognize him immediately. "Eric Phelps," he offered, extending a hand. "Real estate agent. I showed a house to your folks and sister a few months back, out in the West End, brick ranch style." My mouth dried. "You mean this house?" He blinked. "Yeah, I think so. She said you were the buyer they had lined up, that the family was helping her move in soon. I only realized later when I saw your name on the deed." I nodded slowly. So they'd planned this. Long before I even toured the house myself, they'd walked through it like they already owned it. Like it was a done deal, a foregone conclusion. They never saw me as separate from their needs. I wasn't a person. I was a piece of the plan. Dahlia looked over and said softly, "That changes everything." Back outside, the sky was cloudless and sharp blue. I sat on the courthouse steps for a long while, letting the wind hit my skin. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I was finished. Done trying to earn their respect. Done playing the good daughter. Done hoping they'd ever see me outside of the box they stuffed me into. By late afternoon, I was home. I pulled into my driveway just as the sky turned gold at the edges. There was a kind of stillness that didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Voicemail. It was Dad. "We did what we had to do. We still expect you to come to Sunday dinner." I didn't answer his call. I just walked inside, my house, my rules. 1 week passed. The chaos settled not with a bang, but with an echo. I wasn't checking my phone every 5 minutes anymore. I wasn't refreshing Facebook to see if someone else had posted something new, something cruel. I let it all slow down, finally. The air around me was still, like Knoxville had taken one deep collective breath and held it. The post I shared? It was still out there. Not viral anymore, but it had done its job. People weren't debating my sanity in comment threads now. They were sharing their own stories. Siblings who stole inheritances. Parents who played favorites. Women like me, middle-aged and exhausted, trying to set boundaries that never seemed to stick. I received a message from a woman in Ohio. You don't know me, but I read your story. I left my family 3 years ago and never looked back. You're not alone. Another came from a young guy who said, I wish my mom had protected herself the way you are. Thank you for showing me what strength looks like. I didn't respond to most of them. I just read, sat with them, let the kindness settle in, like sun warming through a window. Midweek, Dahlia called. Noreen's lawyer just filed a motion to drop the claim, she said. It's over, Maris. No more case, no more threats. I was sitting at my kitchen counter with a mug of peppermint tea when she said it. I didn't cheer, I didn't cry, I just said, okay. It was the kind of okay that wasn't meant to comfort. It was closure. Clean. Simple. Later that day, Dante stopped by my office at the garage. He leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, his expression unreadable. You hear about Noreen? I shook my head. She applied to the new position over at Ormond's. Didn't get it. Word around town is, her name doesn't carry the same sympathy it used to. I didn't comment. I didn't have to. Let people believe what they needed to believe. Another mechanic, Alicia, mentioned someone from the old church asked about me. Curious, quiet, tentative. I imagined their potlucks and whispered prayers, their attempts to reframe the mess into something manageable. We hope her heart softens, they'd probably say. Mine hadn't hardened. It had clarified. That evening, I opened the windows and began repainting the smallest bedroom in the house. The one that had been a dusty makeshift storage room for boxes I hadn't yet unpacked. I chose a pale gray blue, something calm, something new. With each brushstroke, I felt something shake off, a layer of old expectations, a film of guilt, the idea that I had to earn peace by pleasing everyone else. By the time I rinsed out the brushes and packed away the tarp, the sun had dipped low, casting golden ribbons across the hallway floor. The silence in the house didn't press down anymore. It lifted. I showered, changed into a soft tee and leggings. No plans, no noise. Just a book waiting on the table and a glass of Pinot chilled in the fridge. As I reached for the glass, my phone buzzed once. Voicemail. I knew before I even checked that it was her. Mom. Her voice was flat this time, measured, practiced. Hi, sweetie. We're still doing dinner Sunday, just family, no drama. We'd really like to see you. She paused for a beat, then added, You don't have to bring anything. I let the voicemail play out in full, then hit delete. No more messages. No more soft hooks meant to reel me back in with nostalgia and obligation. I placed the phone face down on the counter and stepped out onto the front porch. The wind was light. The evening air smelled like honeysuckle and cut grass. Somewhere in the neighborhood, a dog barked once and then went quiet. I sat on the swing, legs tucked under me, and looked out at the street. No one parked across the road. No strange shadows on the security feed. No suitcases left on my porch. Just stillness. My stillness. I didn't need their apology. I didn't need them to understand. I didn't even need justice, not really. What I needed was space, and I gave that to myself. You know, for the longest time, I believed setting boundaries made me a bad daughter. But here's what I've learned. Protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's survival. There's nothing noble about letting yourself be consumed by guilt or manipulated by the people who claim to love you. Love doesn't come with contracts. It doesn't twist your story or weaponize your silence. And if this journey taught me anything, it's that healing sometimes means walking away, even from the ones who raised you. So let me ask you, have you ever felt like the backup plan in your own family? Like your needs were always negotiable, but theirs were law? Tell me below. Share your story, your city, or just drop A if this hit home. If this video moved you, even a little, comment 1, so I know you're out there. And if it didn't, tell me why. I'm here for all of it, the real stuff. And hey, if you want to hear more stories like this, ones that dig deep and speak truth, tap subscribe. This channel's not just for content, it's for connection. I made peace with the silence. Maybe you're ready to do the same. Thanks for watching. I see you. I hear you. You're not alone.